Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages that are watching right now, today we are actually going to do something that's like a weird follow-up to a video that I shot earlier in the day, which was actually about a meeting that turned into chaos in the best way for Oakland City Council members to San Francisco, where a similar thing happened as the Board of Supervisors decided that they were going to have an outdoor meeting related to the fentanyl crisis. And of course, this meeting did not go well because, contrary to popular belief, just because you vote Democrat or vote left-wing progressive does not mean you want to live in the filth that a lot of these major metropolitan areas have become. So, the rebellion is real. To quote that Star Wars lady from that movie I didn't like, and the line that was in the trailer but not in the movie, rebellions are built on hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
And I'm gonna give you a dose of that hope in this video. But before we get into that, thank you so much to everybody who signed up on my website, actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to everybody who's listening on Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform. Without further ado, let's roll into the video.
Also in San Francisco today, our cameras captured city crews doing a little cleanup this morning around UN Plaza. It was all to get ready for a special outdoor hearing to address the city's drug crisis.
So I'm a huge fan of local news. 1, because they're goofy. 2, because they're entertaining. 3, because they have poorly produced graphics. But 4, and this probably is the most important reason, they tend to get it when it comes to stories like this. So these local news guys ended up hearing about how they were going to do this meeting outdoors at UN Plaza. And what do? They show up early in the morning to capture the cleanup, because to even have this meeting outdoors, the actual Board of Supervisors cannot face the filth that they've allowed San Francisco to endure, so they send out people in order to clean this up. And by the way, this few seconds of B-roll is so telling about the state of San Francisco that we're gonna have to analyze it like it's the Zapruder film. And I first thought when I watched this that this was normal yellow vest city workers. I see them all the time. However, what you can actually notice is that they're basically wearing hazmat suits. Now, when you see people who work for the city wearing hazmat suits to do any job in any area, you would think, oh my god, there is hazardous biological and or chemical and or radioactive material there, but I assure you, this is not a biological weapons attack, this is not a disease outbreak, this ain't a radiological attack, this is just how you have to dress if you actually want to clean up the absolute filth that is on the streets of the city of San Francisco. So to me, anything beyond at this meeting is irrelevant, because if this is what it takes to clean up your city streets, to clean up your sidewalks, you have failed as elected officials and you need to be removed from office. You have failed as a mayor, you failed as a city council member, board of supervisors member, whatever the hell they call them out in California. This is on you. This is an embarrassment. This is what I would be campaigning on, this image, because they don't clean up the streets at all for the politicians, but they let it get so bad that you need hazmat suits in order to operate it. I've seen hospital workers that are cutting in to living people less covered up than these random city workers that are essentially custodians of the area cleaning up the city streets of San Francisco.
Also in San Francisco today, our cameras captured city crews doing a little cleanup this morning around UN Plaza.
Also, I'm not going to say anything, absolutely anything, about the appearance of this local newswoman, because some of you just drink up that haterade and look for reasons to complain about my videos, but what I will say is I love this woman's sarcasm. Just listen to the way she said, saw some cleanup crews.
Also in San Francisco today, our cameras captured city crews doing a little cleanup this morning around UN Plaza. It was all to get ready for a special outdoor hearing to address the city's drug crisis. But things did not go exactly as planned. The Board of Supervisors meeting barely got started when the mayor was shouted down and the outdoor session had to be scrapped. Our Wilson Walker has more on what happened here. Wilson?
Liz, I'm not sure Las Vegas had an over-under on how long this event was going to last. Some people wondered if it would get started at all, so it achieved that. I looked at my watch when they shut things down, and it was 2:14, so it didn't quite go 15 minutes. Maybe if you're cynical, you thought this thing wasn't going to get anywhere at all, but I can tell you there were people who showed up today hoping to hear a conversation.
So I love this local news reporter. He's like, listen, I had my money on this not happening at all. I had my money on they weren't going to do this because politicians were too cowardly. However, they did it for about 15 minutes, but make no mistake, I set my watch and they didn't quite make it 15 minutes. Now, I also like this guy because his name is Wilson Walker, an alliterated name and a reporter. You know what that means. This guy is one bad day away from being a vigilante, the hero that San Francisco needs, and he's going to beat down the criminals himself, bring them to justice, even if the corrupt mayor won't allow them. So Wilson Walker, I'm sorry I outed your secret identity. I look forward to you being a Cape Crusader in the city of San Francisco, and when you are eventually arrested, listen, I got your back. I'm gonna start a give, send, go in order to raise money to get you out of jail because honestly, you aren't in the wrong, the society's in the wrong, and you just had to take them down yourself.
You know what I mean? I live right across the street, by the way, so I see a lot of this. That my front yard is this. My backyard is this.
A lot of people were wondering what was going to happen, but no one has a bigger stake in this neighborhood's future than those who live here.
Also, and I swear I'm not going to stop this video for all my stupid points, but I will stop this video for each and every one of my stupid points. I thought this guy's mask was a beard. I thought he was trying to be Black Abraham Lincoln, and I have nothing further to say other than that mask looked like his beard, and when you think it's a beard, he kind of looks like Black Abraham Lincoln.
And Dino was among those who came out early, hoping to hear what the mayor had to say.
You know, they should be held accountable. You know, accountability needs to step in, and they need to find some way to stop the drugs being used on the street.
This is what I love to see, and by the way, this is an example of the bait and switch that we see from these lefty policies. For those of you who like to say, well, they voted for it. By the way, you don't get much more progressive than the city of San Francisco, but I do want to point out that they actually recalled their crazy woke district attorney, Chesa Boudin, so they're trying to move in the right direction at least a little bit. But when they were told that they were not going to use the criminal justice system to punish people addicted for drugs, most people did not think they were just going to have open air drug markets on the street and not prosecute the violent criminals as well. A lot of people who backed criminal justice reforms did so with the best of intention. However, a lot of these politicians have insane abolish prisons ideologies, defund the police ideologies, and they're actually pro-criminal. They're actually pro-violent criminal, which is what we see these district attorneys do time and time again. I mean, remember, Chesa Boudin said that he was inspired by the fact that his father got a completely unnecessary and harsh sentence along with his mother for their involvement in the Brinks robbery. This was a robbery where Boudin's father was pulled over by the police, who put his hands up, feigned a surrender, convinced the police to lower their weapons, and then 6 men armed with automatic weapons, not semi-automatic weapons, automatic weapons, burst out of the truck and started firing upon the officers. And when one officer was hit, Officer Brown, and he was on the ground, another one walked up to him with a 9mm handgun and executed him on the spot. Now, that was one of 2 officers that were killed in this robbery because Chesa Boudin's father got them to lower their guard while these people came out and attacked them. And by the way, these were members of like the Black Liberation Front or whatever that stupid left-wing organization was called back in the day, and Chesa Boudin and his father have connections, and the mother, by the way, to the Weather Underground group. This is why Boudin was actually raised by Bill Ayers, the head of the Weather Underground group, post both of his parents going to prison, and he thinks for domestic terrorism and for a robbery and for faking a surrender that led to the execution of 2 officers, they had it hard on them. And honestly, that's what pushed him into criminal justice reform. So San Francisco, maybe super progressive, maybe insanely left-wing, but they did recall and fire the guy who supported his parents in their murder of 2 police officers via ambush and an execution-style shooting of the other officers. So I guess I'm on board with that.
As 2 o'clock approached, San Francisco city government poured in, but they were not alone. There were leaders from the nonprofit community, recovery advocates, effectively a who's who of people involved in the city's drug conversation, all in the very plaza that has become known as the epicenter of the city's drug crisis.
So the local news just glossed over something, but I think it is incredibly crucial that you understand who was just being described to you. When they say recovery addicts and these NGOs and all of that, what we're talking about is essentially the homeless industrial complex in San Francisco. These are the people that profit off of the current policies in lieu of the police department, so they're showing up in order to artificially boost their voice, but make no mistake, they're here for their paycheck, even if they're well-meaning. The fact of the matter is, having a homeless problem not solved by law enforcement creates a perverse incentive because that's how they make their living, and obviously shifting over to these nonprofits, shifting over to these social workers has not gotten rid of the problem if you're in a place that is the known area for the open air drug market. So all of those people could mean well. I'm sure a lot of them do. A lot of rehabilitation people mean well, and I always like to say, nobody's against rehabilitation. Everybody would love if we could take somebody who was a criminal, turn them into a productive member of society. The problem is that's a lot easier said than done, and these are the people working against the citizens of San Francisco, whether wittingly or not, due to the fact that they're incentivized to address the problem in a different way than we actually need. These people need to be cleared out of the area. I'm sorry to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, but you do not have a god-tier right to camp in public in the West Coast. That is somewhere, somehow in the Constitution. That is ridiculous and absurd. We need to have anti-camping ordinances. The police need to be empowered to enforce public order crimes, because what essentially happens is when you allow the environment to decay in this way, that invites criminality. If you create areas or zones that look to the average person like nobody's watching it, nobody's protecting it, nobody cares about it, then that's going to invite all this different illicit activity, and that's what the San Francisco politicians need to actually address.
A spot that has long been challenged, and I hope that today's dialogue focuses some urgency around the crisis on our streets.
So I also want to say one of the things I'm absolutely tired of, and by the way, if you're left wing and you happen to stumble across this video, this is probably the most important message, is this thing about saying how we need to have dialogues or conversations about everything. And I just hate this line of speaking because it's just nonsense speak. It's filler. Everything doesn't need to be labeled this exchange of equally participating partners. What this should be is the residents of San Francisco telling the politicians what they need to do and giving them their list of grievances. This whole idea that it's a dialogue, an equal exchange, and we're partners in this belies the fact that these people are acting like the kings of these areas, and they don't care about the people that they're actually dealing with. They just care about pushing whatever their ideological agenda is and getting reelected via these various groups that act like they're the solution to the problem, which, by the way, would be cleared up if you empowered law enforcement in order to do it.
And for a few moments, things did go according to plan as the mayor gave her opening remarks.
I am putting everything on the line. I am doing this job without fear of losing it, because at the end of the day, when you know what it feels like to grow up in chaos, you want nothing more than change.
Now, look, I'm going to be perfectly honest. London Breed, lying. She is doing this job like the way that other people get this job in San Francisco, because she believes it's a path to a better political future. Gavin Newsom, I believe, was the mayor of San Francisco, and he graduated all the way up to lieutenant governor and then governor. This is the path that they're trying to go for. Kamala Harris was the district attorney for this area. She graduated to United States senator, and then she somehow wound up on the VP ticket. So what London Breed is doing is trying to follow a similar path in California politics. She's not governing without fear. That's absolutely absurd. It will be made more apparent when they all flee from the angry people that all these people do is operate from a position of cowardice. She's been an absolutely horrible mayor, horrific mayor, hasn't done anything for the city of San Francisco, and we're actually going to see the consequences of her policies enacted in real time on the streets as she's speaking about how she's so fearless.
As she spoke about the crisis, it continued right in the midst of the event as public health workers assisted a man in distress right beside the crowd.
Yeah, that's right. When London Breed was giving her speech about how awesome she is and how she governs without fear and she's not concerned about losing her job, she's just the greatest person ever. She's like a humanitarian. She honestly should be your hero. Somebody, due to her humanitarian work of allowing open-air drug markets, OD'd. And you had some of the nonprofit workers, some of the better ones, rush in order to administer Narcan, again, in the middle of her small segment of this event that only lasted 14 minutes. If anything showed you how bad it's gotten in the city of San Francisco, that absolutely is it. And again, I just want to point out, for those of you who say, oh, well, they voted for it, blah, 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 and all of that, in reality, in actuality, the opioid epidemic is also hitting rural America, conservative country, just as hard, if not more, than the city of San Francisco. The only difference is here is that they're allowing them to OD on the streets of their major plaza, but again, this is a nationwide crisis that is not being addressed in a way that I find sufficient. You need to get these people off the streets, not enable their drug addiction, and we don't really have a good solution to this anywhere in the country. It's just that most people don't put this on their front door to advertise their city and allow these people to commit a bunch of other ancillary crimes in order to feed their drug habit, up until the point where they OD right here in UN Plaza, San Francisco.
And then there was the crowd, which eventually became disruptive.
So my question to the mayor is, will you now, as we do in any major emergency...
Yeah, let's put more people in jail.
All right, let me ask my question. You will have an opportunity for public comment.
The fact is, I'm not sure, without listening to the public, that this is going to be the right forum to be able to answer your question thoroughly.
Now, you can see a lot of people who are sick of this softball, nonsensical question that is put forward for London Breed. Of course, she tried to screen the questions because even though she said she's the most courageous mayor who's governing in a way where she's not concerned about re-election, she obviously didn't want to be re-embarrassed. That's why they sent the hazmat suit people out to clean up this area before they had this public comment, because she wouldn't dareth look at the horrors that she has allowed to progress in the city of San Francisco, and people start shouting out, no more drugs, there's chanting, there's this guy who I can't hear, but I wish I could hear what he was saying, and all of these people are just fed up with the nonsense, the pomp, the circumstance, all of this stuff being done in order to glorify these people, and when they're faced with criticism for just a little bit of time, just a few minutes, just a few seconds, honestly, guess what they do? Guess what courageous London Breed does? Guess what she does when she's governing like she doesn't care about losing her job? She has her boy, her little hatchet man, this little weasel right here.
We will recess this meeting to the Board of Supervisors chamber.
Come in and end the meeting for her because, you know, why even live up to the courage that you promised 10 minutes ago if you're the mayor of San Francisco?
And as the meeting was disbanded, some real trouble started. Witnesses described someone pulling out a brick and attempting to throw it before being subdued by the crowd and eventually police. It was a chaotic conclusion to a very brief discussion about how to wind down the chaos in this part of San Francisco.
Look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not somebody who could tell you for sure that somebody is a trans just by looking at them being walked away by the police. But that person was a trans that was trying to throw the brick. If, of course, that's the reason that person is being hauled away, they did just say somebody allegedly tried to throw a brick and then show this person being arrested. So maybe, possibly, maybe that's what that person was doing. The image sequence leads me to believe that. If I'm wrong, then I disavow me being wrong, but it's my speculation based on me hearing something and then being shown an image with it in sequence. But I'm assuming this was somebody who was angry that people wanted something done due to the fact that they're a left-wing activist, because there's a lot of markers of a left-wing activist right there, including the brick throwing, which we saw during the most peaceful protests in American history post the death of George Floyd.
I'm very disappointed because, you know, she came out here, people waited patiently. You have those that's going to be a butthole, you know, that's going to interfere, but most of us, we wanted to hear and couldn't even hear it, and a lot of waste of time.
Now look, the man on the street said it quite clearly. A lot of people came out to make their voices heard, to get some kind of response from their government officials, and it was an absolute waste of time, especially when you cut the meeting short so early. Now, that being said, considering London Breed wanted this to be a big political event for her, because all she cares about, contrary to what she said, is being reelected and her own personal political future, it wouldn't have been that productive anyway, because they're not proposing any actual solutions. Now, throughout the course of this video, I've actually proposed a number of solutions. First and foremost, Wilson Walker, suit up, put on your costume, get your equipment, finance your attack, you're a reporter, maybe you're a Kryptonian, and start clearing out the muck of the city. I believe in you, brother. You definitely can do it. You have an alliterated name and you work for a media outlet. Therefore, you must be a superhero. But also, we have to change the way that we're viewing these kind of situations. You have to enforce public order crimes, because what ends up happening is if you allow an area to decay, you end up with more criminality happening. San Francisco is not just the biggest open air drug market in the United States of America, it's also somewhere that suffers from one of the highest rates of car break-ins in the United States of America, and that's because people know nobody is watching the metaphorical store. By the way, speaking of stores, San Francisco is also dealing with rampant surges in retail theft and businesses closing due to that. So what you're doing by allowing this blight to take over is creating a cycle that drives people into more poverty, more despair, and will ultimately lead to the creation of more addicts. Now, San Francisco, to be clear, did not create the opium crisis, but this is not the way that you deal with it. We don't have a good way to deal with it now, but we have a lot of piss poor examples, and this is definitely one of them. If you're going to have places where addicts can go in order to use drugs, those need to be injection sites like in Portugal, where people can be offered help, but that is the only place. And if you do it outside in the open air, you should be arrested and redirected to over there. We understand that a lot of people got addicted due to the fact that pain pills were just pushed out everywhere and we're all dealing with the consequences, but we cannot have these people out in the public in open air drug markets committing additional crimes and all of that. You're letting addiction, mental health, and criminality combine to destroy your city, and that's not what we should be doing. That's not what anybody should be doing. And I'm very proud of the residents of San Francisco for not only getting rid of Chesa Boudin, but for also standing up to their mayor, because like I said before, and I'll say it again, a lot of these people were bait and switch. They thought they were going to be nicer to addicts who were sick people, but still enforce the major crimes. And when they see the actions of their political officials, they're fighting back in the way that they know how. And remember, we got the tough on crime legislation from Democrats joining the fold. We got it from left-wing black Democrats having enough from their own constituents of the criminals in their own areas. We need to build bridges with these people so we can get better legislation, not just on a local level, not just on a state level, but on a national level. We need to go back in the direction of the 94 crime bill and away from the direction of things like the First Step Act. And yes, I did say that our soft on crime president Joe Biden was right before in 1994, and President Trump, who at least talks about law and order and is interested in law and order instinctively, signed a piece of legislation that was just no bueno in comparison. Now, of course, I'm not trying to pretend that Joe Biden is supportive of the same pieces of legislation that he would have backed in the 1990s, but I think it's important for all of you who say, well, you get what you voted for, therefore, ha ha, whenever you're victimized by criminality, that I want to support the tough on crime Republicans as they campaign, not the Republicans as they voted for that First Step Act. And it wasn't just President Trump, it was a lot of them. Believe me, it's a big problem, and the incentives that it creates for local governments are harmful for all of us in this country. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Maybe I'm reaching a little bit too hard for hope from these left-wing cities, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute madness that happened when London Breed actually had to face the consequences of her own policies. Till next time.